Hi, this is Manish Dave. I am a platform architect with Intel, and I'm going to present this project called Open Security Controller. And the demo actually goes through, how we're going to orchestrate two virtual security functions for OpenStack. Okay, so here's the legal notices and disclaimers, but let me move to the architecture itself. So the specific problem that we're trying to solve is how do you orchestrate security policies and network provisioning across multiple virtualization environments. So over here you see, on the bottom you see the OpenStack environment with SDN. Which is what we are going to show right now, but then you can also have like a Kubernetes environment with containers with SDN again. So this is something we talked about this morning, where we showed integration through OpenStack Courier, and using that, how do you do service insertion for security for some of the container environments. Similarly, you can have Mano and other OpenStack or any other network virtualization, computer virtualization. So the idea is really, how do you get the security function? So on the top, you have the security function. There could be multiple of them. There could be like a virtual security function manager, such as like IPS. There could be firewall manager and so on. And on the right over here, you have like the physical appliances. So each of these data centers is going to have some sort of a physical appliance. So you're already managing those using, your IPS or firewall managers. So what we're doing right now is you have the virtualized version of these appliances. So you can see there is a virtual IPS, virtual next-gen firewall, virtual web application firewall, and so on. So the security function catalog is going to have, like all these security functions available, and the security controller is going to go, create like a logical entity called a distributed virtual appliance, and then deploy it across all these different data centers. So at the end of the day, this is a very powerful concept, but what it is giving you is, as a security administrator, you can now continue to manage your security across all these different data centers, like you were using the physical appliances for the virtualized appliances across all these data centers. And then the second thing is, from a security function manager, you can continue to focus on your security itself, rather than worry about like how to integrate with all these different environments, because that abstraction is getting done by the Open Security Controller. So the use case that we are basically going to show today is, this is the generic use case that I'm going to talk about, is advanced threat protection for east-west traffic. And so on the right you see, like in the OpenStack, there's like a 3 workload group or tenants, whatever you want to call it. There's a finance, there's an HR, production, and each of these now have some web application and database layers, so things are running. And then on the top you have the network and the physical firewall. And then on the left, you have the different appliances. So you have the firewall, the application delivery controller, and IPS. And then you have the catalog and then the controller itself. So based on your policy that you have described, for example, on your finance, you need to have, wherever the logs are shown, you need to insert the firewall or IPS or whatever the service chaining that you're going to be inserting that will be defined. And based on that, the security controller is going to go and deploy them, interact with the OpenStack and SDN. So that was the general use case that I talked about, but let's know the demo that I'm going to show right now. So again, OpenStack microsegmentation using policy-based security service chaining of multiple vendor security functions. So we're showing 2 appliances today in this demo. One is the Palo Alto Network Next-Gen Firewall. So this is the virtual appliance which runs on OpenStack. And then there's an Intel Security Virtual IPS appliance which runs as a signature-based protection. So, and then we are running it on top of, so we are using Plum Grid in this demo. Of course, we can integrate with other SDN controllers, and we're also working natively with networking SFC. There's a project started where we will integrate with that. So in this use case, you're showing that the Palo Alto is taking some sort of a advanced threat protection, and then the security, the virtual IPS is doing some kind of a signature-based attack. So we'll show a scenario where, without all of this, how it can be compromised, the server can be compromised because it's vulnerable. And now we're inserting this service chain with those 2 appliances, with the security controller, and then those attacks will be stopped. So that's the first benefit. And the second benefit is, based on your dynamic service chaining and all of this insertion and centralized policy management, now you can scale up and down your environment without worrying about security. So the demo workflow is as follows. So the first time the security controller is going to get configured with the OpenStack connector. So there'll be multiple OpenStack data centers and so on. So the first thing is you're going to go and configure that. Then you're going to create and manage all those security services. So in this case, like I've discussed, there's like two services. One is the Palo Alto network next-gen firewall, and there's the Intel Security virtual IPS. And then you configure those. So in configuration, there's a couple steps which I'll go through in the demo. One is a distributed appliance. So you create this logical entity on how you're going to deploy these two security services. And then the deployment specification itself, like how you're going to deploy those services. Next, you create the protection policy or profile, which is where you're going to create like a security group within Open Security Controller, which is basically you're telling it like what need protection. In this simple demo, we're going to protect the web server, which is vulnerable. And then you bind this to the policy itself. So once you bind this policy, then the service insertion and chaining will happen. And then on the right, you will see that after that, once this initial setup is finished, which is the security administrator has configured all the policies, so now the application developer or DevOps is going to spin the workload up and down, and after that everything is automatically protected. So that's pretty much the workflow. And this is the topology. So in the topology, you see on the top left, you see the Open Security Controller. So it's got the virtualization connector, of course, which is the OpenStack controller. And then it's got the SDN plugin, which again is PlumGrid we're using right now. And then you have the two manager plugins. So these are the two security managers. One is the NSM is the security manager for the McAfee virtual IPS. And then the Panorama is the manager for the Palo Alto virtual network firewall. So now you have within the OpenStack, you have like a attacker VM and a protected VM. The protected VM is the vulnerable VM, which is now has, we're going to run like two scenarios. One is like a scripted attack for command.exe. And another one is like we're gonna try and download like a file, which is a malware file, and then each of these two things will be stopped by the virtual IPS and then the next-gen firewall. Okay, so with that, let me get into the demo. So over here on the left, you see the virtualization connectors that we can define. You have manager connectors. We're going to define, again, in this case, we're going to have two managers, and then we're going to have the catalog and the distributed appliance. So let's walk through each one. So first one is, this is the UI, of course, of the security controller. So the first one we are going to go through is connect, the data center itself, which is the OpenStack controller, and then the IP there. So this is where we create that. The next is the manager connector. So within the manager connector, now we have like the NSM, which is the security manager, and then we have the other one was the Palo Alto. So now the security service function catalog itself. So let me pause right there. Okay, so this is there are two origin appliances for the IPS, and then you see the other appliance for the Palo Alto itself. So next is we're going to create like a distributed appliance. So this is the service definition of the appliance. So then we're going to go and tell it like what are the which nodes and what are the deployment specs that it's going to have. So once we have done that for both services, and this is, so now this is getting deployed. So this is it's already pre-deployed. So I'm just showing you what is there. So there's like a Palo Alto network next-gen firewall, and then there's like a IPS virtual appliance, and then there are the two VMs that we are going to work on to show the attack. One is the attacker, one is the victim. So victim is the vulnerable server, of course. So once that going into the, so this is the PlumGrid view. This is the SDN which we're using. So it's going to show you the actual view of the network. And over here you can see, there's like the topology for the network which is protected, and there's this inspection network where you have the firewall and the other services. So moving next. Okay, so this is the services view within PlumGrid. It shows you, there's nothing there because we have still not configured the services. So at this point, we're going to go and create sort of, first, let's just actually log into the attacker. So this is the attacker console. So we're trying to attack the website. So first is the normal website. We're going to get into that. It looks good. This is the banking site. Then we're going to run into the command.exe, and then we're going to run into the. So both of them attacks are successful, as you can see. So next we're going to go and now do the configuration. So this is the security group. So now I'm going to tell it that, okay, need to protect that port. So as you can see, the protected port for right there, the victim web server, I'm going to add it to the protection port. Okay. And then we're going to bind it. So this binding is when the chain is constructed. And this is when you're going to see the, the Palo Alto and the IPS. So in this case, we're going to use both, and the chain is constructed. And then we'll see at that point, if you go back to the services view in PlumGrid, you'll see the two services. And then after that, we're just going to go back. Okay, now this is successful in the jobs. So now we're going to go back and try to attack it. So of course, the normal traffic will still work. And then we try to download the virus file, which is now blocked, and then the command.exe didn't go through. And so we're going to go back into the console and show you. So this is the virtual IPS console, McAfee Neutron Security Manager. So you can see that red box there, right? It's blocking the command.exe, which we actually did. And then this is the normal traffic in the Palo Alto. This is the UI for the Palo Alto log viewer. And then you see, in the threads, we'll wait a second, it will show up now. Okay. So in the threads, you'll see that it was blocked. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So in summary, we're using the Open Security Controller to orchestrate multiple security VNFs using PlumGrid SDN in for OpenStack microsegmentation use case. Thank you.